Pilots can be pretty daring, but luck is not always on their side, leading to deadly crashes, leaving nothing behind but wreckages to remind the world of the disaster. In this video, I will take you on a journey through the 20 craziest plane wrecks with unbelievable stories. So without any further ado, let's start. Number 1. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. The 1972 Andes flight disaster has to be one of the most terrifying incidents in aviation history. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 was a chartered flight of a Fairchild FH-227D that was directed from Montevideo, Uruguay to Santiago, Chile. The plane was carrying 45 passengers, including an entire rugby team with their friends, families, and even a few supporters. The plane itself was a 4-year-old aircraft piloted by 2 pilots. Lieutenant Colonel Dante Hector Lagurara was a trainee co-pilot, while Julio Ferrardes, who had flown past the Andes about 29 times, was the head pilot and Lagurara's trainer. Before the disaster struck, the reports say that there were some complications regarding whether this was due to an ongoing storm over their route. Because of that, the flight was planned to stop in Mendoza, Argentina. On October 13, 1972, during the flight, the pilot decided to reroute and go south to the Pass of Plachon, which would allow the aircraft to pass the Andes Mountains and reach its destination safely. But that's when they made their biggest and final mistake. The pilot miscalculated their landing. They thought they would reach the airport within 1 minute, but it should have taken them 11 minutes to reach the runway. This mistake cost them their lives. The plane faced extreme turbulence and soon collided with 2 mountains. The pilots initially tried to dodge them by elevating their plane, but that was a desperate attempt. The back of the plane was torn apart, which led to the instant death of 12 passengers. Surprisingly, the front part of the plane and all its passengers survived the crash barely. The plane was now sitting on top of a glacier at an astonishing elevation of 3,570 meters, all torn apart. There were only 33 survivors. Some of them faced only minor injuries, while 6 died later due to their bones and organs being crushed by the impact. One of the pilots died instantly, while the other, who was barely alive, gave the passengers a gun to shoot him and free him of his pain. The passengers didn't shoot him, but he died anyway. The survivors, who were a rugby team, lost many of their members, including their families, that day, and those who survived were also going to die sooner or later. All they had to eat for survival was a bunch of candy bars and a few bottles of wine. About 16 days later, on October 29, 1972, an avalanche hit the plane, burying it and killing 8 more survivors. Unfortunately, as the food ran out, the 19 survivors had to rely on cannibalism to survive. The plane was white, which made it impossible for the search teams to spot them, and the search efforts were called after 8 days of searching before the crash. There was no greenery or animals around the crash site, and the survivors had to face sub-zero conditions. Finally, after 72 days, the survivors were rescued on December 23, 1972. This happened because 2 survivors managed to walk across the mountains and reach the civilization from where they brought help. It took 2 rescue flights to save the survivors. In the end, only 12 people survived the incident and told the chilling story of their survival on a mountain where no life can exist. Number 2. Northwest Airlines. Flight 255, Northwest Airlines. Flight 255 is yet another one of the terrifying disasters that shook the entire world. The plane was a McDonnell Douglas MD-82, regularly scheduled for passengers from Saginaw, Michigan to Santa Ana, California. The flight also made small stops in Detroit, Michigan, and Phoenix, Arizona before reaching its destination. On August 16, 1987, Flight 255 departed from Saginaw and made a brief stop at the Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport. When it was time to take off from the Detroit airport towards Phoenix, Arizona, the plane takeoff roll was longer than usual. The aircraft's rotation finally began around 1,200 to 1,500 feet from the end of the runway and, unfortunately, rolled off to the left. This led to the plane striking into a rental building while crushing vehicles parked in its way. The aircraft caught on fire, killing all 148 passengers, with one survivor, a 4-year-old girl named Cecilia Chichan. She suffered from serious injuries but managed to survive. She's grown a lot throughout the years, still traumatized by the incident that took her family from her. The flight crew consisted of 6 members, 2 of whom were experienced pilots. However, the first captain was new to this aircraft. Sadly, none survived the incident. 2 bystanders on the ground were also caught up in this crash, leading to their instant deaths. This delay is believed to have occurred because the flight crew didn't properly use the taxi checklist to make sure that the flaps and slats were extended for takeoff. Number 3. Air Canada Flight 797. Air Canada Flight 797 was an international passenger flight that left Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport on June 2, 1983, and was directed toward Montreal-Dorval International Airport. The flight was supposed to stop at Toronto Pearson International Airport before proceeding. The aircraft was a McDonnell Douglas DC-932. Captain Donald Cameron and First Officer Claude Ouimet piloted it, and 41 passengers were on board. As the aircraft flew, a fire broke out in the rear lavatory. The staff tried putting it out using fire extinguishers, but the fire kept spreading and filled the plane with poisonous black smoke. The airplane made a safe emergency landing at Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport. The plane burnt like hellfire, causing the deaths of 23 passengers. This incident led to several changes in aviation society, including fire detectors in lavatories to prevent similar accidents like those on Air Canada Flight 797. Number 4. Delta Airlines. Flight 191. Delta Airlines Flight 191 plane crash on August 2, 1985 involved Lockheed L-1000-11-385-1 TriStar, which was supposed to reach Los Angeles, California from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The flight made an intermediate stop at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, but when it reached the Dallas airport, it experienced a sudden microburst. The burst caused the aircraft to lose control and crashed just over a mile away from the runway. The plane crashed into a car and 2 water tanks, killing a total of 137 people. The casualties included 128 passengers out of 152, 8 crew members out of 11, and 1 bystander on the ground. The National Transportation Safety Board investigated the main reason behind this disaster, which was supposedly caused by the crew's attempt to fly the plane across a thunderstorm. The crew lacked the training to avoid and escape a microburst, leading to a massive amount of casualties which the world will never forget. Number 5. United Airlines. Flight 232. United Airlines Flight 232 was a death flight for 112 passengers who were on board the McDonnell Douglas DC-1010, scheduled to O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, Illinois, from Stapleton International Airport in Denver, Colorado. On July 19, 1989, the aircraft took off, carrying 296 passengers, but unfortunately, the plane crash-landed in Sioux City, Iowa, due to a catastrophic failure that caused its tail engine to fail. Due to this sudden calamity, the pilots, Captain Alfred C. Haynes and First Officer William Records, lost all control of the plane. The aircraft began to descend at a rapid speed. The captain tried his best to regain altitude. In the last report, they used throttles to fly the plane. The aircraft circled multiple times in hopes of reducing the altitude and lowering the speed so it could land in Sioux City. As it approached the runway, the aircraft had twice the speed needed for a normal touchdown, which eventually caused the plane to crash and explode while it flipped over. 184 passengers and the crew in the cockpit survived the incident with serious injuries. The crash happened due to the failure of the fan rotor assembly due to prolonged fatigue stresses, which are caused by the lack of proper maintenance and inception of the engines. Number 6. Aloha Airlines. Flight 243. The flight from Hilo International Airport to Honolulu International Airport in Hawaii, aka Aloha Airlines Flight 243, involved the Boeing 737-297, which made an emergency landing on April 28, 1988. The 19-year-old aircraft showed no issues as experienced pilots. Captain Robert Schornsteimer and First Officer Madeline Tompkins took off from the airport. There were 90 passengers on board. At an altitude of 24,000 feet, the plane's left side ruptured on its way to its destination. The aircraft's captain quickly realized that there was some issue as the plane rolled to the left and right. Soon, the pilots lost all the controls. They quickly informed the Honolulu Air Route Traffic Control Center about the alarming situation. They also informed the Maui Tower of the decompression and and requested emergency equipment. Thankfully, the plane was able to land safely without much damage. Sadly, one of the flight attendants got ejected from the aircraft, leading to her instant death. 65 passengers were severely injured, but there were no casualties. After an extensive investigation, this incident also occurred due to poor maintenance of the airplane. Although there was only one casualty, this whole scenario could have been much worse if the flight crew had not handled it carefully. Number 7. U.S. Air Flight 427. On the tragic date of September 8, 1994, the U.S. Air Flight 427's Boeing 737 300-passenger flight took off from Chicago, Illinois, scheduled towards Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The aircraft, crewed by Captain James M. Loesch and First Officer Robert A. Rittenhouse, crashed in Hopewell Township, Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board, including 127 passengers and crew members. There were a total of 132 casualties during this plane crash. The plane entered a steep descent, causing a massive impact because it hit nose first at a speed of 261 miles per hour. The Pittsburgh Tower even received a distress call from the cockpit as the plane was crashing down, which was witnessed by many on the ground. The probable cause of the crash is determined to be the rudder malfunction, which caused the aircraft to enter a steep descent, eventually crashing, leading to the deaths of many. Number 8. ValueJet Flight 592. ValueJet Flight 592 from Miami International Airport to Atlanta's Hartsfield International Airport tragically crashed into the Florida Everglades on May 11, 1996. The aircraft, McDonnell Douglas DC-932, was carrying 104 passengers with 5 crew members, killing everyone on impact as the plane hit nose first. The accident occurred less than 100 miles after the takeoff, as the crew, Captain C.W. Johnston and First Officer J.R. Riddle, radioed the traffic controllers due to smoke blowing inside the cockpit. The pilots quickly took a turn to get back to Miami Airport, but the traffic control lost the aircraft from their radar because it crashed about 14 miles away from the airport. The crash site was extremely hard to access and took several hours to locate. Everyone on board was soon declared deceased due to an intense in-flight fire, possibly initiated in the cargo area of Flight 592, making it one of the deadliest plane crashes ever. Number 9. TWA Flight 800 on July 17, 1996, from John F. Kennedy International Airport. TWA Flight 800 scheduled to reach Rome with an intermediate stop at Paris. The Boeing 747-100, piloted by Captain Ralph G. Kevorkian, co-pilot Stephen E. Snyder, and flight engineer Richard G. Campbell, took off with 212 passengers and 18 crew members. Approximately 12 minutes after takeoff, a spark ignited the center wing fuel tank, causing a massive explosion that caused the aircraft to tear apart and crash into the Atlantic Ocean. Everyone on board died in the incident, turning the day into a black day in the aviation society. Number 10. Swissair Flight 111. Swissair Flight 111 is another plane crash that was scheduled from John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York, to Geneva Airport, Switzerland. On September 2, 1998, the McDonnell Douglas MD-11, carrying 229 passengers, including the crew, set off on its journey. Only 53 minutes after taking off, the plane reached an altitude of 33,000 feet, and the crew in the cockpit smelled a burning odor and saw some smoke. They initially thought that it was an issue with the air conditioner, so they ignored it and proceeded to Halifax International Airport, which was only 76 miles away. The fire spread above the cockpit during the descent, causing the systems to fail. The crew tried to make an emergency landing, but unfortunately, the plane crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. During the crash, the plane was at the speed of 345 miles per hour, and on impact, it caused the plane to be destroyed, killing everyone on board. The investigation determined that the fire started due to faulty wiring, which ignited the flammable material above the cockpit, causing the system failure and an inevitable crash. Number 11. Air France Flight 447. Air France Flight 447 was a commercial flight carrying 216 passengers and 12 crew members from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to Paris, France. The aircraft used was an Airbus A330-203, which departed from the airport on May 31, 2009, and later crashed in the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 228 on board. airport. The flight was said to be 11 hours long, with 3 experienced flight crew members operating the airplane. The aircraft suffered temporary inconsistent airspeed measurements due to the ice crystals forming at the aircraft's pilot tubes. Due to this incident, the aircraft disconnected from autopilot, which led to the crew reacting incorrectly, eventually leading the aircraft to enter an aerodynamic stall. The aircraft lost all contact with the ground when it reached an altitude of 35,000 feet and eventually crashed into the ocean. The Brazilian Navy was able to recover 2 bodies and a major wreckage of the plane within 5 days of the crash. It took 2 years to recover the aircraft's flight recorders, which helped uncover the mystery of its fall. It's worth noting that this whole incident occurred due to the pilot's lack of knowledge. If they had recovered the plane from a stall, all of them would have been alive today. Number 12. Malaysia Airlines, Flight 370. The Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is known to be the most mysterious plane incident to have ever occurred in the history of aviation. The flight, operated by Boeing 777-200ER on March 8, 2014, was scheduled from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia to Beijing Capital International Airport in China. But mysteriously, an hour after its takeoff, the plane, its 227 passengers, and 12 crew members disappeared from the radar. And since then, no one has found a trace of where they were. If they crashed, then where's the wreckage? There has to be some debris left to discover, but nothing was found. The search for the missing plane was conducted in the South China Sea, Andaman Sea, and even the Southern Indian Ocean, but no leads were ever discovered that would reveal the fate of those on board. The search covered about 120,000 square kilometers of ocean, making it the most expensive ever conducted. It lasted until 2018. Several theories, including technical failure, were proposed to explain the mysterious disappearance of the aircraft, but these were soon debunked. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau proposed their theory that the airplane experienced a hypoxia event in which the cabin lost oxygen, causing the crew to fall unconscious. Another theory suggests that the plane was hijacked, in which the crew was also involved, which is a good explanation because only a crew member can pull off such a complex stunt. But these are just theories, and the fate of those innocent lives and Flight 370 remains unknown. Number 13. Ethiopian Airlines, Flight 302, Ethiopian Airlines. Flight 302 flew on March 10, 2019. The Boeing 737 MAX-8 involved in the incident crashed shortly after it took off from the Addis Ababa Bole International Airport. The flight was scheduled to reach Nairobi, Kenya, but unfortunately, all 157 people on board died when it crashed very close to the town of Bishoftu. The aircraft was merely 4 months old at the time of the accident, meaning it was a very young plane with new technology. The plane was piloted by Captain Yared Getachew and the first officer, Ahmed Nur Mohammed, who reported the traffic control about the flight control issue. The maneuvering characteristics augmentation system was activated, which automatically caused the aircraft to descend. The pilots tried their best to regain control, but the aircraft continued to dive downwards, eventually crashing into the ground and killing everyone on board. The investigation into this incident found a major flaw in the plane's MCAS system, along with the pilot's lack of training, which led to a terrifying accident. Number 14. United Airlines Flight 173. United Airlines Flight 173 was supposed to take off from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York and land at Portland International Airport in Oregon. The McDonnell Douglas DC-861 aircraft scheduled for the journey carried a total of 181 passengers and 8 crew and made a brief stop in Denver, Colorado. Once the plane departed Denver, it began to approach its destination. But when it was finally time to land, the crew found out that their landing gear had malfunctioned. Due to this sudden issue, the aircraft circled around the airport for almost an hour, but during that time, the crew failed to keep their fuel tank in check. Once the fuel ran out, the pilot lost all control of the aircraft, causing it to crash land into a wooded area and destroy an unoccupied house. The crash site suffered significant damage, including 10 deaths and 23 severe severely injured. The incident occurred due to the crew's lack of attention, which included Captain Malbon McBroom, First Officer Roderick Beebe, and Flight Engineer Forrest Mendenhall. Number 15, Malaysia Airlines. Flight 17, Malaysia Airlines. Flight 17 was the unlucky flight that was shot down over eastern Ukraine. Boeing 777-200ER aircraft was scheduled for this flight, which departed Amsterdam and headed to Kuala Lumpur on July 17, 2014. The flight was carrying 283 passengers and 15 crew members who were all murdered when a Russian-made Buk surface-to-air missile hit the aircraft, flying at an altitude of 33,000 feet. The plane broke apart and crashed near the town of Hrabov. This incident was one of the results of the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, costing the lives of innocent people. Even though it was pretty clear who was responsible for this mass murder, Russia refused to admit its involvement. Moreover, this incident was also supposed to be connected to the mysterious disappearance of Flight 370, which occurred only 4 months before this incident. Number 16, Air India Flight 182. Air India Flight 182 was a scheduled passenger who suffered from a terrorist attack on June 23, 1985. The flight was operated on the Montreal-London-Delhi-Bombay route as the bomb planted in the airplane exploded, killing 329 people on board. This incident was the worst terrorist attack to have ever occurred after the September 11th attacks in 2001. The culprit of this incident was a Canadian Sikh terrorist named Inderjit Singh Rayat, who planted a bomb in the aircraft through a bag sent from Vancouver. The plane was at an altitude of 31,000 feet when the bomb exploded. This incident led to numerous controversies and changes in the aviation society. Number 17, Pakistan International Airlines. Flight 8303. On May 22, 2020, Pakistan International Airlines Flight 8303 was scheduled to Jinnah International Airport in Karachi from Allama Iqbal International Airport in Lahore. The aircraft used for the flight was an Airbus A320-2214 aircraft carrying 91 passengers and 8 crew members. When the flight was very close to its destination, the aircraft experienced technical issues, which included the loss of both engines and a failed landing gear extension. Due to this, the pilots made a second attempt to land again without landing gear, this time with no landing gear, ultimately resulting in a devastating crash in the model colony near the Jinnah airport. 97 passengers died, while 2 survived with injuries. The plane crashed in the residential area, which led to 8 people being injured, one of whom passed away due to severe injuries. The reason for the crash was later made public, stating that the pilots were overconfident and engaged in a conversation about COVID-19 while approaching the airport. Number 18, Japan Airlines. Flight 123. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 was a passenger flight that took off from Tokyo's Haneda Airport and was en route to Osaka International Airport. The aircraft was a Boeing 747-146 SR, which was at a height of approximately 24,000 feet within 12 minutes after takeoff. Suddenly, the aircraft suffered a severe decompression, resulting in a massive structural failure around the rear lavatories. The pilots immediately sent a distress signal to the Tokyo Area Control Center, requesting an emergency landing at the airport. However, it was too late as the pilots had zero control over the plane and it came crashing down until it hit Mount Takamagahara. The crash killed a total of 505 passengers out of 509, with 4 passengers miraculously surviving the incident. All 15 crew members also died in the incident. The accident occurred due to faulty repair by the technicians. Number 19, Saudi Arabia Airlines Flight 763 and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, Saudi Arabia Airlines Flight 763 Boeing 747-168B carrying 312 on board was scheduled to depart Delhi, India for Dhahran, Saudi Arabia with a stopover in Jeddah. Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 2011, an Ilyushin Il-76 aircraft carrying 37 people was departing Chimkent, Kazakhstan for Delhi, India. Both planes had similar routes, resulting in a mid-air collision on November 12, 1996. The collision occurred over the city of Chaki Dadri, India, resulting in 349 casualties on both planes. After a prolonged investigation, the cause of the accident was determined to be the lack of communication due to a language barrier and failure to follow the instructions by the Kazakhstan pilot. The collision occurred at approximately 14,000 feet, making it one of the deadliest mid-air collisions in history. Number 20. 1960. New York mid-air collision. The 1960 New York mid-air collision is yet another deadly collision that occurred on December 16, 1960, between United Airlines Flight 800 and 26 Douglas DC-8 jet and Transworld Airlines Flight 266 Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation. The incident occurred over Staten Island, New York, at an altitude of approximately 5,200, resulting in 134 casualties, 128 people on both aircraft, and 6 bystanders on the ground. This accident was determined to have occurred due to the lack of correct instructions from the air traffic control system, which failed to provide a properly separated path for both planes. That's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed watching it. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you won't miss out on our new content. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.